What's going on, everybody? Coming at you with another Pudgy Boys Sports Talk podcast. Something a little different today than what we've normally been putting out. Typically, this channel was dedicated to just sports, and you could call it a sport, as we're going to be branching out to more things that we're very passionate about. One thing for myself being is professional wrestling. Just to give a brief history, and that's not going to be brief. It'll probably be pretty long. I don't want this video to be too long, because Eric is the editor of these videos, and if I make this too long, he's gonna kill me. So I'll do my absolute best to keep this discussion at a minimum. So as you can see, I am by myself today to try and give just a little brief synopsis on why I love wrestling and why I wanted to include this in the channel, and moving forward, why we will be branching into different things like wrestling and UFC for Eric, who's a big fan of that company. We're just going to be talking about different things other than football, basketball, baseball, that type of stuff. But for me, wrestling has been in my life for a long time. Ever since I can remember, when I was 6, 7 years old, probably when I first became passionate about wrestling. It was obviously for me with the WWF at the time, which had to change their name due to some animal rights group. But WWE has always been a huge part of my life, before sports, before girlfriends, before wives, before friends, before anything. Wrestling was the main thing that was a weekly part of my life for as far back as I can remember. So, like many people my age, I fell in love with wrestling during what many consider to be the greatest era of professional wrestling, which is the Attitude Era. That ran from about the end of 1997, me being 33 years old now, 34 in a few weeks, about the end of 97 to probably 2002, end of 2002, was pretty much the greatest 5-year run in professional wrestling. It was a time where friendships were made because of wrestling, friendships were broken because of wrestling. Because if you weren't on one side, you were on the other side, which was the WCW side. I wasn't the biggest watcher and advocate for WCW at the time. I was more of a Monday Night Raw kind of guy, Stone Cold Steve Austin kind of guy, The Rock, all these guys. To me, WCW wasn't as intriguing when I was a kid. WWE was doing more of the stuff as a 10, 11-year-old that you were interested in watching. If I have to be blunt, they were doing a lot more risque type stuff involving women and bra and panties matches, the wrestling in the mud, and doing all this stuff as a 10-year-old kid, 10-year-old boy, 11-year-old boy. This is the type of stuff that you talk to with your friends about. They had more cleaner storylines to me than the WCW had. I know WCW's biggest storyline was Goldberg, and they had Hulk Hogan and Goldberg's streak, and it just wasn't intriguing to me, but I digress. Wrestling on this channel is going to start to become a little bit more involved. So what I'm going to try to do, I don't want anybody to hold me to anything. What I'm going to try to do is upload wrestling content a couple times a month just to discuss the current state, the current product of the WWE. I'm not going to dive too much into AEW. I know that's a conversation for another day, and I don't want to create any enemies, but I will say I'm not the biggest AEW fan. We'll just leave it at that. But WWE-wise, I think the current product has the... this is why I kind of wanted to make this video. I think the current product has the potential. It'll never match the Attitude Era, but I think the current product has the potential to get a lot of the fans that disappeared for a while back. And because of guys like Roman Reigns, who have been completely dominant, because of guys like who've become a favorite to me, like LA Knight. I'm a big LA Knight fan. I want this guy to be the top star for at least another decade. I would like them to ride the LA Knight train, get behind him, and just see how far they could take it. So why LA Knight resonates to me is because of the fact that he is Attitude Era type style, like the way he talks, the way he goes about wrestling, the way that he cuts his promos, the way that he looks, the way that he walks. It's a whole thing that you won't understand unless you live through the Attitude Era. And you see LA Knight, you see he's got that little piece of him inside of him. You got the Roman Reigns type, the big bad wolf at the top, who's pretty much unbeatable now. But I think if you could just ride this LA Knight wave, I think the WWE can kind of get a lot of these fans back that they've been missing for a few years. So going back to when I first started my love for wrestling, I wanted so badly for the Attitude Era to come back 5 or 6 years ago. It's never going to come back with the amount of cancel culture and the amount of woke things that have been going on in the world today. It's impossible for the WWE to get away with what they got away with. I mean, just some of the things I can think of at the top of my head was like anything Val Venus did back in the 90s and early 2000s was insane. Then you got the hoe train with the Godfather. You're not gonna trot women out today and call them hoes. It's just not gonna work in today's world. You think about when Al Snow ate his own dog because the Big Boss Man killed Al Snow's dog and then cooked it for him. It's just the things that you could think about off the top of my head. Having the Big Boss, I'm mentioning the Big Boss Man a lot. I guess he's a lot more than I remember. When he crashed the Big Show's funeral and then he attached the Big Show's father's casket to the back of his truck and drove it across the lawn. I can't even. I'm just getting happy. I'm getting giddy thinking about these moments because these things it was out of this world. And if you got to experience the Attitude Era like I did, and a lot of my friends did, and my cousins and my family, if you got to experience this era, you could just think back at some times in your head, remember where you were when you watched it, and realize how amazing it was. There was a point in time during that era where the WWE couldn't do anything wrong. They were throwing shit against the wall on a weekly basis, and it was just sticking. Anything they threw against the wall was sticking. Again, you look back at it now, a lot of things aren't going to play well in today's time, but it worked. And I mean, a huge part of that was obviously one of my favorite wrestler of all time, which was Stone Cold Steve Austin. He did on a weekly basis. You tuned in on Monday night to see what this guy was going to do to Vince McMahon every single week. Vince McMahon being the second most important in my list, and I'll do future ranking videos and all that type of stuff in other videos if anybody's interested in that kind of thing. But to me, besides Stone Cold Steve Austin in the Attitude Era, I'd put Vince McMahon right either on par with him or the next tier below him, along with The Rock and The Undertaker and all these guys. But Vince McMahon was just the biggest part as the Attitude Era Stone Cold Steve Austin was. There is no Stone Cold without Vince McMahon. There is no evil boss Vince McMahon without Stone Cold Steve Austin. So they come hand in hand. And the things that they were doing on a weekly basis with Stone Cold, driving the Zamboni or saving Vince McMahon's daughter from The Undertaker being kidnapped by the Ministry of Darkness, that type of stuff. My favorite storyline of all time being the whole introduction of Kane being The Undertaker's brother. That was built up for close to a year with Paul Bearer and then the whole family dying in the funeral home, that type of thing. But that storyline was absolutely insane to me, and how they pulled that off and how they had the patience to keep Kane under wraps. And unlike today's time where everything has to move quick, things just kind of timed well during that era. Maybe because I was younger. I didn't have social media. I didn't have all this stuff to ruin a lot of these debuts and all these house shows and stuff like that. But now, looking back at it, I can't say that that was the greatest era of the wrestling that I could think of. And if anybody wants to rival it or think about anything other than that, the New Generation era, which preceded the Attitude Era, was something where Vince it seemed like he was trying to be a little too vanilla, where it was everybody was a good guy, eat your vitamins, say your prayers, that type of thing. It was tough. And once Vince realized that the bad guys or the badasses were getting the cheers over the good guys now, over the Bret Harts, and over the Shawn Michaels being a bad guy getting more cheers when he was a heel than a face. Vince smartened up and he realized it's time to take this thing into a new era. And it wasn't just wrestling, it was the 90s in general. The 90s changed a lot of people's views on how a lot of stuff was happening. So that's just my brief history as a child and why I fell in love with wrestling. Then after the post-Attitude Era, I'm in middle school. I'm graduating middle school. In high school, wrestling starts to become a little less of a portion of my life where I'm not following it on a weekly basis. I would probably say at the end of 08, 07, 08 is kind of where I stopped watching on a weekly basis. Like I moved into sports, meaning, football, basketball, baseball. That kind of took precedent in my life over wrestling at the time. But I've come back in spurts with wrestling. I've given it chances during the Ruthless Aggression era, which was 03, and John Cena was a huge part of that. Batista was a huge part of that. There's other guys I'm going to forget. But these guys were such huge parts in keeping wrestling alive post-Attitude Era that they deserve a lot of the praise as well. John Cena gets the praise, but there's a lot of guys from that era that deserve a lot of praise for keeping wrestling alive during what many consider to be post-Ruthless Aggression, kind of a dead era in wrestling. CM Punk had brought me back during the whole pipe bomb incident, which I think was which a lot of us think are staged anyway. But CM Punk brought us back. I know the Daniel Bryan Yes era was catching a lot of eyes and catching a lot of people's attention. I wasn't the biggest Daniel Bryan guy. I think that the WWE didn't do a good job of riding that wave as much as they could. I think they were forced to ride that wave, and you could kind of tell by how they were booking him. But once Punk left, there was a real lull in the company for a couple of years. I can't even imagine watching wrestling in 2018, 2019, and being interested in it at all. I wasn't interested at all. I would just do that same thing where I would watch I'd watch the Big Four, the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, Survivor Series, and SummerSlam. I would even attend a few of them, just because you still have that passion for something after so many years, especially when you're a kid. You kind of want to relive those moments. And watching these guys get older now, it's getting tougher. It's getting a lot more sad because a lot of those guys that I had grown up watching can't even wrestle anymore, like Undertaker. And when they do get in the ring, you want to see it as a fan, but when you watch these guys perform, it kind of gets a little sad watching them not being able to hit the ropes the way they used to. But yeah. So 2018-19 was pretty much a lull for me. Something that got me back into it besides Punk in the mid-2000s was the release of the WWE Network. That has been the greatest. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but that's probably to me the greatest release of an app with content that I could imagine over your Peacock. I know Peacock and WWE Network can combine now, but at the time, Peacock, Netflix, Hulu, whatever app you could think of that was releasing content with original stuff that they had. I don't compare anything to the WWE Network because the WWE Network is endless. I could go back as far as the 60s and watch things from those eras and relive them as if I was watching them live. I've done this thing where I've watched Raw and I've watched SmackDown from the Attitude Era in chronological order as if I'm reliving it. I started from the end. I started from the start of 97. This is not my most promising moment. It kind of makes me look like a dweeb, but I started from the start of 97 and I'm up to the end of 99 now, like where I'm watching these shows as full order for Raw and SmackDown and then the pay-per-views and everything like that. So I've went through 2 years of content and it's crazy reliving all this stuff because you forget how much actually happened during those times. But the WWE Network kind of re-engaged me a little bit into the company, and it kind of brings me to where I am today and why I wanted to make this video. It's already at 15 minutes. Eric's going to kill me. So it's kind of why I wanted to make this video. The current state of WWE is still one of the most popular things in wrestling. I mean, I'm sorry, it's still one of the most popular things in the world, which is the WWE. I think they have a shot at lighting a fire under a lot of people's asses that haven't watched wrestling in a while. And it's because of, I don't want to sound like a mark and just say because it's one guy, but LA Knight has a stranglehold over the WWE universe and its fans. The man is basically receiving the same pops from the audience when he comes out of the tunnel as guys from the back, guys from 15, 20 years ago were receiving. The Stone Colds and the Rocks and these guys. He's receiving those pops from the audience compared to those Attitude Era levels. Nothing's ever going to be, when you hear that glass shatter in Stone Cold, nothing's ever going to compare to those pops or The Rock. But this guy, for today's time, is receiving that type of energy. So what I don't want the WWE to do today, because now that I'm re-engaged and I'm watching on a weekly basis and I'm following on a weekly basis and a daily basis, my belt collection is growing and these things are not cheap. So the WWE knows I usually wait for like the things to be like 25% off or 50% off after a pay-per-view. WWE does that a lot. They put a lot of things on sale, which is really nice of them. But anyway, I want LA Knight to be the new face of the company that they ride for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, a decade. I want him to carry this new generation of wrestling fan the way that I was carried by the Stone Cold Steve Austins, by the Undertakers, by the Rocks, by all these guys from my era. I want the young fan today to be able to experience LA Knight, Roman Reigns as these rivals where they have to pick a side, where they have to argue, where they have to agree, where they have to disagree, where they have to say Reigns is the best, Knight's the best. And you hope and pray that wrestling and the WWE keeps this momentum going. Roman Reigns has been world champion now for over 3 years, or it's close to breaking Hulk Hogan's record, and he'll do that at next WrestleMania, which is awesome. I love that. I love the fact that they're doing something completely out of the box, especially in today's generation. Like I said before, today's generation where everything has to be quick. You know, I like this guy. He needs to be champion now. I like this girl. She needs to be champion now. That's what a lot of people want nowadays. And the WWE is doing a real patient job of keeping Roman Reigns champion. But at some point, it's going to run out. At some point, someone's going to beat him. And what a lot of us would like to see is Cody Rhodes beat him. I wouldn't mind that at all. You could still have LA Knight be. You could still have guys like LA Knight be the face of the company, but not have to hold the title. Stone Cold did a great job at it. And I keep mentioning the same names over and over, and I keep forgetting. I apologize for that. There's a lot of guys that don't need a championship to be relevant. Austin was one of those. Undertaker was one of those. The Rock was one of those. Shawn Michaels was one of those. Bret Hart was one of those. These guys didn't need championships to be relevant. I think we've reached a point with Roman Reigns where he doesn't need a title to be relevant. Okay? You could drop the belt with Roman Reigns, have him take a month or 2 or 3 off, come back, and he'll still be top guy because he's Roman Reigns now. He's held the belt for over 3 years, almost 4 years. You need other guys to carry that title for a little bit, just to get some relevancy. And the next guy who beats Roman Reigns is going to be that guy again. So that's kind of where I stand. Moving forward on this channel, we're going to try and branch out to wrestling content for me. Eric will join me on a lot of wrestling stuff because he was a fan when I was a fan in the Attitude Era type stuff. He's going to start branching into some UFC videos, which is really cool. I'm not the biggest UFC fan, but maybe his video or something like that will ignite me into watching UFC. We do thank the channel's growing very slowly, which we're appreciative of everybody that does subscribe to this channel. We were at 27 subscribers about 3 weeks ago. We're at 42 now, and it's growing quick. If we could reach 50 by the end of the year, that would be amazing. And it's a slow grind, and we just continue to try to put stuff out that we want to put out because we love it. And wrestling is one of those things. And my last point is what I love about wrestling or professional wrestling is the fact that it's always been there no matter what. So I was able to take these breaks from wrestling knowing in the back of my head it's going to be there whenever I want to come back. And the WWE knows that. They know that people take these breaks. People work. People have kids. People have lives. It's not the same. I mean, wrestling's just not the same anymore. Wrestling's easily accessible through phones, through your cell phone. You could watch wrestling. You could go on Twitter. You could, I don't know what it's called now, X, Twitter. I don't know. You could go on Twitter. You can go on YouTube. You can go on any one of these sites and watch wrestling and catch up without having to watch the show. So that's kind of the benefit, and it's also kind of the sucky part of it. But I've gotten back into the weekly following the wrestling, cheering for certain guys, cheering for certain girls to win belts, win matches. I do my best, not trying to spoil it for myself, because that kind of just kills the mood for me. If I'm going to watch Raw, I don't want to know that certain guys are going to beat certain guys that night, or predictions or anything like that. But yeah, going forward, this will be the channel. We're going to continue pushing out sports stuff. It's going to be a lot easier for us to not to talk about the Giants so much until draft time. So, yeah, we want wrestling to be a big part of I want wrestling to be a big part of this channel. It's something that I have a huge passion for. So I'm just going to continue pushing stuff out, and then hopefully it resonates with a lot of people, and we could discuss old memories that we have of wrestling, favorite wrestlers, favorite moments, favorite storylines. There's so much that could be discussed, and we're just going to continue to doing that. So hopefully that's something that we can all agree on or disagree on. Doesn't matter. So thank you for watching this, and until the next video.